I'll get my makeup team and my assistants out of the room now as well, since we're recording.
Welcome, everyone. We'll wait just a few seconds here to let everyone join, and then we'll begin. All right, looks like we can get started. Welcome to the Healthcare Lounge. Today, our session is titled The Unnetwork Network with Morgan Smith of the Coral Platform. So now I'll turn it over to Nelson.
Thanks, Kendall. Welcome to the Healthcare Lounge. I'm Nelson Griswold, and I'm delighted to have you with us. We've got a very, very interesting topic today with a special guest who is going to share with us a new approach to solving the healthcare cost problem that provides an additional layer of cost containment. And so without further ado, let me introduce our guest today, Morgan Smith, who is Chief Operating Officer of Coral, the platform for direct contract healthcare, the largest platform, the largest marketplace for surgical bundles and other direct contracts, other healthcare direct contracts, and also with Unity Preferred, which is going to be part of what we talk about today. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nelson. Glad to be here, and I see the people flooding in, which is fantastic. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Well, we do have a lot of folks coming in that, frankly, I didn't know how many we were going to have today. So this is great. This is a good topic, though. So I want to sort of set things up. Let me go back to the slide presentation for 1 second, because I want to give everybody a little bit of a context in which we want to fit this conversation. So our special guest, Morgan Smith, but many of you have been following what's going on in Israel with the war in the Middle East, in Gaza. But more recently, you may have read that Israel was attacked with hundreds and hundreds of drones and missiles, maybe in the thousands, from Iran, which is the first time Iran had ever directly attacked Israel. They've always used agents of theirs that, like Hamas, other groups that Iran funds. This is the first direct attack. Amazingly, 99% of the drones and missiles that were sent to attack Israel didn't make it to Israel. They were destroyed in the air by the Israeli missile defense system. Now, some people have heard of Iron Dome, and they go, well, Israel used its Iron Dome, but it's not that simple. It's not that direct. In Israel, there are not one, but three layers of defense, actually four if you divide up the top layer. It starts with the Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 missiles, which provide defense against ballistic missiles that are being sent. So ballistic missiles will go very high and then come in at a very steep trajectory. The Arrow 2 and 3 can intercept those ballistic missiles, which, by the way, are moving at extremely high speeds. For mid-range and long-range missiles that are not ballistic missiles, there is a missile defense system known as David's sling. So if you think about David slaying Goliath, he used his sling. It was not a slingshot like we know it today, but rather long piece of leather with a little pouch in the middle. He slings, releases one end, the stone flies. Well, David's sling is a missile that is designed to knock out mid to long range missiles. The Iron Dome defense is for short range missiles. So they have these three layers of defense, three layers of protection against these missile threats. Why do I bring this up? Well, because we have right now generally what are thought of as two levels of defense against particularly the costly surgeries, which is among the most costly and prevalent healthcare costs that we have. So I want to let's start this way, Morgan, and talk about the least expensive of these, but what you always have with cost is frequency. So the less expensive costs occur more frequently, higher frequency, and the severity, frequency and severity of claims is what we're working against. Frequency is high, severity, the cost is low, relatively low for outpatient surgeries. Only when you get into the expensive, like open heart surgery and brain surgery and things like that, do you get into the six figures and even high six figures, even into the seven-figure range. So the defense, the best defense against outpatient surgery costs is surgical bundles. So I'm going to bounce back to putting your handsome face back big. And yes, ladies, I'm sorry he's married. But
I'm honored that you
happily,
call my face
happily,
handsome. Man,
happily
my
married.
wife, if she was half as nice as you are, Nelson.
Well, that's I'm married too, though, Mortgage. I'm not available. Sorry. So what I want to talk to you about, Coral is the premier platform for surgical bundles. But I think it's a good idea to talk. Let's talk about outpatient surgery and surgical bundles, what they are, how they work, and why they're such an effective defense against the cost of outpatient surgery.
Absolutely. Well, I think if you, I love the analogy, first of all, and there's something that I think a lot of our partners would find somewhat satisfying about relating the traditional healthcare ecosystem to Hezbollah and Iran. But I think maybe not in a good way, the US healthcare kills more people. And not a lot of people know that. So, I mean, it's probably a pretty apt analogy here that we really want to keep people out of the old system and into the new system to give them, better quality of life, better care, all that stuff. And as you pointed out, a lot of that really starts with taking these cases that are going to be done in hospitals and moving them to surgery centers. And that's been a tremendous success over the last decade. There's been a big shift, and what you're left with is a really different landscape. And now we're kind of in the next evolution where a lot of these surgery centers are really elevating their game and offering surgical bundles. And so for those who don't know, I can't see all the names or anything of the folks that are in here, but what is a surgical bundle and why is it important? So your surgical bundle is going to be all of the components of the surgery wrapped up into one price, like a McDonald's Happy Meal, if you will, or when you buy a car like a F-150, you're not going to buy all the individual components and get billed by the engine manufacturer, the battery people, the wheels people. You're just going to pay one price. Although the dealerships are their own own mess, but for sake of argument, right, you got one price for that car, and that's what a surgical bundle is. And just like a car, you would expect a new car to have a warranty. And that's critical because a surgical bundle with us is going to have a warranty that there's risk on the line. And that's so important in giving that one price and having that risk, because you end up in these weird scenarios where if you put yourself in the shoes of a surgery center group or something like that, you're probably not going to go out there to the world and say, this knee surgeon is good and these two are bad, because each one of these knee surgeons is bringing in millions in revenue for you every year, if not every month. But if you go to that same center and you ask for a bundle, right, a surgical bundle, you'll find that typically they don't have that many doctors who they're going to go out and risk and offer a warranty on, where they're going to say, hey, one price, it's all in, the full enchilada, and we trust this surgeon to deliver the results. We're confident in our work. And in any other area of our lives, your life, anything we deal with, we expect warranty, whether it's a plumber who's coming to fix something. If they break something, you expect them to fix that at their own cost. And in healthcare, that's not the norm. But with Coral and bundles, it is the norm that if something goes wrong, they're going to take care of that patient and they're going to guarantee the outcome. Now, thankfully, in the history of our company, we've never had anything go wrong like that, but it's still the safety net that it's there, that they're trusting that this doctor is the best. Their own data shows this doctor is the best, and that's who you get to access through the bundles. So probably back to our Iron Dome example, maybe it's one step further than Iron Dome, is we like to think of the surgeons and the teams that do bundles with Coral as the Navy SEALs, right? They're not, you're not going to do everything with the Navy SEAL, but when you need the best of the best and you need an operation done perfectly and you need it done right, that's when you're going to have these teams, right? They work together and they really, it's kind of a cohesive unit, like SEAL teams, or, you know, we always like to use Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, their teams in their primes. That's who you're going to get, you know, Kobe and Shaq. That's the operating room that you're going to go in when you're with Coral. So that's kind of that level.
Okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper into surgical bundles, but first, let me, for those of you who are with us today, as your questions come up, go ahead and enter the question in the Q&A. Just click the Q&A button, type your question in. We'll try to ask it along the way, or we'll do some time at the end to answer your questions. I urge you strongly, go ahead and put your question down, because if you're like me, I have these great questions, but I don't write it down and I continue to listen and then I forget my question. So go ahead and make a note of your question now in the Q&A, and I promise you we'll get to it before we get out of here, unless there's just an amazing abundance of questions, which might happen. The other thing I wanted to mention is you may know about surgical bundles. We're also going to talk about reference-based pricing. What you don't know is this third layer that we're going to talk about, that Morgan is going to bring to us. So don't jump off thinking, I already know about surgical bundles. I already know about RBP. We're talking about bundles and RBP in order to lay the groundwork for this third level, this third layer of cost containment. So don't jump off thinking you already know what we're talking about, because I promise you, you don't know about this third layer and you definitely want to learn about it. So Morgan, I think I want to emphasize the one point you made, because these bundles have a guarantee, a warranty, usually any complications within 30 days, sometimes it's 60, seen them out as far as 90. You've got a self-selection process. How does that work?
Absolutely. Well, I'll answer that with a story from my own experience, which was I needed my hip labrum was torn 2 years ago. I thought I was stronger than I was. I was squatting real heavy and squatting deep like they used to teach us. And now they say, well, maybe don't go so deep. You know, everybody's body's special, yada, yada, yada. But they're still in the old school training, and tore my labrum. And when I went to talk to some of the providers that I knew about, I figured, you know what, I'm finally a patient. I'm young, but I'm a patient in this experience of Coral. I get to finally kind of know what our patients that we work with are going to go through, what their experience is going to be like. So you Google, first thing you do, right? Hip labrum torn, my area. And you realize two things right off the bat. One is you're up against a hospital who's paying tens of thousands of dollars a month in SEO optimization. So why you should get your labrum repaired with us. We're the best, whatever it might be. And you see that apparently in any given market, everyone's surgeon who does this is the best. They all have their own justifications for why this guy's the best, that gal's the best, whatever it might be. So that's one. But two, at the time I actually had Blue Cross. And so at the time I figured, you know, I'm going to call someone that I know about their bundled offerings and learn a little bit more. So I called the front desk as if I wasn't who I was. I said, hey, my hip labrum is torn. Do you guys have anybody who can take care of me? And they checked my insurance first, which is kind of an odd question when you're thinking about, you know, who the best doctor is for a patient, checking insurance first, but that's what they did. And they said, oh, we have 6 doctors. They're all great. Every single one of them is fantastic. And so I thought, that's an interesting thing. Usually there's not that many of anything that we work with in Coral in any given major metro. So I logged into Coral and I looked for this procedure and they didn't offer it. This particular provider didn't offer that as a bundle. So what's that tell us? That when they're on the hook financially, they don't trust anybody in their own practice. But if it's Blue Cross and they can, just bill and get paid regardless of the outcome, well, then they have a bunch of options. So you self-select when you're going to be at risk through that kind of general way. But you also think about it like this, that if you're a surgeon and you can offer a bundle, you're probably pretty good, first of all. And what's the byproduct of being good? Generally, you can do things a little bit faster. What is it? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast or something like that. Can't quite remember the expression, but what you get is a surgeon that could maybe do a couple cases in a hospital context with Blue Cross or something like that. And you've got a surgeon who's in a surgery center. They're going to be able to do probably 3 to 4 times the number of cases in the same amount of time. And what that means is even if that facility is going to offer a bundled rate that's severely discounted, they're going to do more of them per day. And those patients are going to spend less time under anesthesia. They're going to get home more quickly. They're going to get back to work more quickly, and they're going to have better outcomes overall. So it's almost like a volume discount game when you really think about it. But of course, you have warranties and a whole lot of other stuff that comes together to make this really terrific outcome. I don't know if I got too off track there, Nelson, or if I answered the question.
Yeah, this is perfect. And the point you're making, and the point I just want to emphasize is the beauty of bundles is it brings not only lower cost or cost containment, it also ensures quality because bad doctors who are prone to causing complications, creating readmissions, all of which go on the plan as a cost. So
Absolutely.
you're having the patient have to go through 2 surgeries instead of 1, and the plan's paying for 2 surgeries, even though 1 would have done. So you get both the quality and the price, which is generally not the case in most cost containment. Most cost containment is cost containment. But because of the structure of bundles with the guarantee, with the warranty, you get that added, I won't say added benefit. My friend Leah Bender, who runs the Leapfrog group in Washington that monitors hospital quality and safety, has said, and she's actually said it for the first time on the stage at Ascend a couple of years ago, there is no good price. There is no good price for bad healthcare.
That's a
So
great expression.
isn't that it's so insightful. So you've got this surgeon who he'll do it for half. Well, he's a bad surgeon. He's dangerous. Who wants that? Who wants that deal? So the bundles assure that you're going to get not just a good price, but you're also going to get a quality surgeon with quality outcomes as a result. So let's take it a step up, and let me go back to our PowerPoint for just a moment because I do love graphic aids. All right, so we've got the surgical bundles that help us address outpatient surgery cost, but then we've got everything else because bundles aren't everywhere. Number one, and you're really limited by the number of quality surgeons who will do them. So what's the answer? Currently, the answer has been reference-based pricing. So which will cover outpatient surgeries too, just not nearly as efficiently and as effectively with the quality assurance that surgical bundles will. But talk a bit about RBP and how RBP works within this context.
Absolutely. Well, RBP, when it came out, was pretty revolutionary, and has a lot of people. It's gotten a lot of savings, but the United States is big, and which sounds like a pretty dumb statement. Texas is big. The United States is massive, and there are so many different markets in the country that are all different. And you have certain markets where I'm going to be honest with you, RBP is probably one of the best solutions out there. And you're going to have a great experience. It's going to be low noise and low cost. But what we keep hearing from brokers and advisors is that doesn't seem to be their experience in their particular market all the time. They may have one it works with, one it doesn't. And there's a lot of sometimes gaps in information where you don't know who's in network or who they can go to, who they can't go to, what's safe, what's not safe. And there are various solutions in the market that help to solve that, but it can sometimes get great savings in year one and start to cause noise down the line. Now, there are a couple of exceptions that I think there are some great vendors out there, but by and large, we're hearing the noise level is very high. And so our approach has been, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something in between these two layers where you're not just going from, the 0.01% of docs who can do bundles and then everybody else is RVP. There's just got to be something in the middle. So that's kind of where I think we may get to our second solution, kind of our middle of the stack solution.
So let's go back to our graphic. So while RVP covers everything, surgical bundles give us a better solution for outpatient surgeries when they're available. But even if you have outpatient surgeries covered by surgical bundles, you also have a lot of surgeries that aren't eligible for bundles. And those would be those surgeries that have to happen in a hospital operating room. And that OR is not going to be part of a bundle. The hospital's not going to play that game generally. There are a few hospitals that do, but by and large, the bundle game might work for outpatient, but generally is not going to be applied by the hospital to a major surgery that's going to run into the 6, maybe even 7 figures. So that gives us the opportunity that you at Coral recognized for an intermediate level of cost containment above surgical bundles, but below RVP, in the sense that if this works, RVP isn't necessary, but we always have RVP as a backdrop. And this is what you are calling unity. So talk about how did unity come about? What was the inspiration for this mid-layer approach that you were calling unity?
So as I think unity is almost a generic name at this point. I think there's a couple of unities for different things, but it's a great name. And it's perfect because it encapsulates what we're trying to do, which unifies all of the parties and their interests. So in RBP, you've got this layer at the back, which this last line of defense, which is often a great last line of defense, but it can cause some noise and it can cause a lot of heartburn for providers. Some providers, they're fine with it. Some it causes noise with. And the reason for that is because the buyer side is telling the provider side what they're going to accept, essentially, which there's no other industry that exists like that, where after the product is delivered, then you decide what you're going to pay for it. And you're deciding that based on, sometimes a somewhat, arbitrary metric. And so that can cause a lot of heartburn. It's very antagonistic in its very nature, right? It's not a conversation. And then at the other end, you have the bundles, which is the tip of the spear, but again, it's limiting, right? You've got the best of the best, which is phenomenal all around the country. We have more bundles than anybody, but at the same time, not everybody qualifies, and patients are still going to want to go to their doctor. Patients are still going to want to go to XYZ doctor, and how can we help them? And so what started it was we wanted to have conversations with providers of all types, not just the surgeons, imaging centers, and stuff like that we work with traditionally. We wanted to talk to everybody and say, look, there has to be a middle ground between the traditional network build out where it's this, we're going to fight to the death here on this negotiation. I need the biggest discount off of bill charges or whatever it might be. And that the Blue Cross, Cigna, United, those kind of networks are going to be doing, where they're going to say in the rural area, the provider is going to give them 400 or 500% of Medicare, or 10% off bill charges because they have to have coverage. And then in the city, maybe they'll give them a little bit better rate, but that health system knows they're going to make up their money over there in the rural area by price gouging. There's all these games that are played. And we said, what if we didn't? What if it was just a normal business that you knew what you were getting? It was a conversation. Again, just like buying a car, you can compare prices, and sure, some dealerships are different than others, or you may, when you're buying a TV, whatever, you can look at different options, but at the end of the day, it's your own choice in terms of convenience, in terms of features, All of those things are your choice. And we want to bring that back to healthcare on both sides. We want providers to be able to say what type of employers, what type of patients do they want to work with? How can they serve their communities and have a direct line of communication with their community instead of it just being Blue Cross, like this black box? Because as a lot of people know here, I think Nelson, you actually maybe, I don't want to say coined the term black box, but I think you had a slide about it one time where you have the black box of healthcare, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in that box. And there's a lot of incentives to keeping people from seeing inside. But the reality is that if you could just see who you're working with, you're not going to be that mean to them. That's the way life is. Online people are mean all the time, and Instagram comments or whatever it might be. But when you meet people face to face, they're almost always nice. And that's what we wanted to do here, was just have a conversation, right? What if we brought the providers and the employers to the table and we said, guys, everybody's got to make money, everybody's got to eat. We know that. But there's got to be a middle ground between this, I'm going to pay you 100% of Medicare and fight to the death, and we're going to go to court over it, and this network discount of fake stuff world over here. Why don't we meet in the middle and say, provider, I've got groups in your area that if you can give me a great rate, these members can go to you for free. You're going to have lower overhead. Your life is going to be easier administratively. And all you got to do is give me a great rate. And if you can't, that's okay. We can still work with a good rate. You'll be, available to these folks. It won't be free to those members, but they may still want to go to you. And then if you can't give a great rate, well, maybe we circle back later when it's more appropriate at that time, but it's just a conversation. We're not coming at them saying, you need to do this, that, or the other, or playing hardball or jokes. We're going to really just have a conversation with them. And the same goes for the employers, because employers need to have this choice that if having a certain hospital or health system in network is going to raise their premiums by 30%, which in a lot of cases that one decision will, they need to be able to make that choice. And if it matters enough for their employee retention and what their people want, great, then they get to make that affirmative decision on their own terms. But they're not being told by anybody else. They're not having to pay or subsidize for any other networks, any other services. They're just doing what they want to do and what they want to use and what's applicable to them. So that's what Unity is. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but as you can tell, I'm a little passionate about it and fixing this problem of just there's such a disconnect in the culture today, and we want to get that conversation back and unify payers, providers, and patients. That's the mission.
So thanks for that explanation. Let me offer a little bit of perspective maybe on your approach versus the RBP approach.
Mm-hmm.
RBP is a Band-Aid. It's an effective Band-Aid. I'm not denigrating RBP at all, but it is a Band-Aid on a cancer. And the cancer is that bad network contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's the network contract is really not good for anybody, but it certainly is not good for the employer, for the payer in this process. So RBP comes along and says, we're going to tear up that contract, and we're allowed to do it by the courts because you're accepting Medicare reimbursements, which are remarkably lower than your commercial rates for the same procedures. And so if Medicare, which is the government will tell you, the CMS will tell you, Medicare is cost plus a reasonable profit. Hospitals dispute that, but notice they still take it. But even if it's cost, let's say it's cost, then there's no profit. If you're willing to pay 160% of Medicare, that's Medicare plus a 60% markup. What business operate outside of software operates on a 60% markup other than retail? But that's at retail. You don't take into consideration the fact that most retail stores, most retail operations are running sales all the time at far less than their 100% markup, where they double the price. This is true. They have what they call keystone markup. It's doubled. But then they have a sale that's 60 or 70% off. Then it's 60, then it's 50. And eventually it's like 80% off. So yes, they have 100% markup, but they don't have 100% profit margin. Well, the hospitals are charging 300, 400, 500% of Medicare to commercial plans. yes, there's a discount off of that for the network discount, but it's still remarkably marked up over Medicare. Courts have said, look, hospitals, if you're taking Medicare and this employer is offering you, this health plan is offering you 160% of Medicare, we're going to uphold that. We're going to allow them, you're going to have to take that. But it is a Band-Aid on a bad contract. What you're doing, and it's also impositional.
Mm-hmm.
You will take this amount of money, as you pointed out earlier. It's the buyer telling the seller after it's been delivered, as somebody put it, you drive a car off the lot and then you tell the car dealer how much you're going to pay for the car.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That's a great
that's not going to fly. But also, never would you take the car off the lot and get a bill or an invoice 6 weeks later telling you how much the car is, because you were never told before you bought the car. And oh no, you can't bring it back. You got to pay the price. So it's, we're dealing a little bit in Alice in Wonderland
Mm-hmm.
territory when it comes to healthcare pricing. What RBP doesn't do is have a conversation and a discussion and a negotiation. I mean, sometimes there's a negotiation, but it's on RBP's terms. What you're doing that I find so admirable isn't really the right word, but so smart is to say what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And here's an incentive to get us a better price. Not only can we give you patient flow, but patient flow that you don't have to chase after the patient for
Mm-hmm.
their share of the compensation you're getting. And you didn't even mention, I'm guessing that like bundles, this is going to be paid in 14 to 21 days.
So this is where there's a little bit of I wish Greg, our CEO, was on. He's very passionate about payment terms, and he's trying to get the world to be instant pay. We have a few clients that are signing up for that. I think that can sometimes be hard. I think employers are always going to have a little bit of a delay, right? It's a small business. It's a 50 life group. Sometimes it's difficult for them to come up with 30, 40 grand at a moment's notice for some of these things. But so I would expect 14, 30 at the outer limit is really going to be the edge if they're going to give those great rates. But again, if they can't offer those great rates, I wouldn't expect the employer to pay a higher rate in a short amount of time, right? It's both, it's a push and pull. It's a give and take, right? If you're going to give me a great deal, I'm going to pay you quick. And that's what we want, just to control, right? It's a choice for
Well,
whatever.
and I think that's where it's a unifying process, to use your expression, where it's let's come together and figure out what works for everybody.
Mhm.
Will everyone be thrilled by the results? No. In fact, if it's a good outcome, probably everybody will accept the results.
Mhm.
They're not thrilled, but I can accept these results. The employer is paying more than they want. Hospital's getting less than they want. The hospital's getting paid faster than the carrier would ever pay them. The employer is paying faster than maybe he'd like to. Well, I usually get 60 to 90-day terms. I mean, 30 days. It's the deal. But the point is, it is a negotiation. So you've gotten someone's interest. One of our next gen rising stars, Terry Shook, advisor out of Illinois, said, how can you have those unity conversations in all markets? How do I get you to focus on my market?
That's a great question. So one of the really fantastic things about Unity and why we decided to start it is at Coral, we have 2.7 million lives, right? We have all of these people all around the country. And that was one of Coral's founding strategies, kind of in its go-to-market in the early days, was have a pricing model that allowed us to get more people in one place to have these conversations years later. Because if we have all these people and we started with all this goodwill and all these good conversations, then when we go to providers, we say, look, we do have all of these people here and we've connected all of these employers. So instead of it being that black box, we know exactly who all the employers are. And we're talking to these providers and say, look, these are the people in your community that we want to help. And so let's say in Illinois, we'd go, here's all the people we have. Here's exactly where they are. And honestly, if we didn't have a lot in that area, we tell the provider, we don't sugarcoat it. We say, look, we've got, I was on the phone with a gentleman in Tucson, an ENT doc the other day. And I said, you know, man, I've got about 40,000 lives in Phoenix and about 3,000 in Tucson. And he said, well, hey, that's good enough for me. I really want to be a part of this, but it's that conversation. And so how do you get Unity to focus in your market? Well, that's kind of our sales pitch, right? If you want us to focus on your market and contract for you and build out your network, that's why you sign up for Unity. Plain and simple. We work for you. We want to be the reason your clients renew. We want to make your life easier, reduce the noise, and have every one of these employers say, man, this healthcare product is working for me. And it's a little bit more white label than that, but I'll give you kind of what we call our hero stories and our promotional stuff is so with Unity, what we'll often do is we'll get all of the folks that your members want to go to and we'll start contracting with them. And then the members can nominate providers. And of course, nominating providers is not exactly the most unique experience that exists in the world, but when they nominate a provider, we're going to update you with a list of all the providers that were nominated. And then whenever you go to your client, you can say, look at all this work that we did for you while I was gone. You know, if you meet with them every quarter, every 6 months, whatever it might be. So every time you meet with them, you have good news to share about the work that was done. And of course, you don't have to do anything to make it happen. We do it for you, but you know, we're out there working for you in these markets and building your network. So you get critical mass as well. So let's say year one, you build out some contracts. Then when you go to sell a new client in the same area next year, well, I already have all these direct contracts in this area. I'm just going to plug it right in, carry on. And then what's extra cool about that is you can plug in these networks with any TPA that you want, any plan. It's basically yours to bring with you and plug in and put in front, right? We want you and your clients to be in control. That's the most important part because we don't want Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, we don't want anyone to be able to tell any employer or broker what they can and can't do, what provider they can and can't use. That should not be their decision. That should be in the employer level. But some of these networks will say, hey, if you want to take a better deal with someone else, I'm going to pull my network contract. I mean, that's crazy that they can do that, but they do it all the time. And we really want to put a stop to that. So I kind of went on my high horse again, but so all of that to say that you can just connect with us, drop us a line, an email. And I do see Bill actually jumped in there and said, as a PPM percentage of cost or something else, we do support all models. We do PPMs, we do percentage of savings. It's not really our preference, but we really support whatever is going to take that group to the next level and let you be the hero for that plan. I mean, so eventually a couple of deals that we've done so far, we had a few larger groups. We had a couple 30,000 life groups that wanted to start on percentage of savings. We said, are you sure? Because you're going to pay us a bunch of money. And they said, yeah, we're sure. And they went ahead and I said, I'm going to put an option in this contract that you can switch to a PPM because this number is going to get really crazy really quickly. And sure enough, it happened in about 5 months. They went, oh man, you guys weren't kidding. This percentage savings that number is millions of dollars. And I said, I told you, you don't want to pay that bill. And so we switched them over, but we really want to be the partner of the employer and your partner in this. That's so whichever model works the best. And so I see Dory jumped in there and said, is it a standalone product? Yes, it is. It is a standalone product. So you can plug it in any market, however you want. Most people are going to use it with a zero out-of-pocket program with Coral, but you can kind of go either way, whatever works best for the plans. Nelson, did you see another? Were you about to say something out there?
Thank you. I had my mute on. I wanted to jump in and say make a couple of points. First of all, like any cost containment strategy, if it's not utilized by the employee, it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. I can flat out tell you that Unity will not work if you put it in a group without any steerage, without any navigation. Navigation and I mean the evidence is just overwhelming. If there's not navigation for an employee to find, whether it's a direct contract for diagnostic imaging, whether it's cost containment for high cost medications, or whether it's for surgery, doesn't matter. When people are sick or hurt, they're not in a mood to go research. They're not in a mood to go find the least expensive. Their insurance is paying for it. What do they care? They might remember that they have a free health care or we can waive your out of pocket, but they probably don't because they heard it during open enrollment, maybe, and it's now July. They have completely forgotten everything they heard in open enrollment. So these, when Dory asked, "Is this a standalone product?" It's a great question, but no cost containment should be a standalone product in the sense that it's not in the toolbox of a navigation partner, whether that is medical utilization management, like an AIM, or whether it's a standalone navigation. They don't do pre-auth, but they use nurses, and most of them use nurses to provide that guidance. Can you back me up on this, Morgan?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was mesmerized. I was in a trance. I was just nodding my head and saying, yeah. So, well, I would echo that, but I would also say there, what's cool about Unity is you could, in theory, not that I'd recommend it, but you could do that. But I think you hit the nail on the head that you do want steerage in all these programs, because what we found, it just will take us back in time for a second, is when Coral first came out, it wasn't the smoothest interface 7 years ago. It was kind of hard to use. And at that time, all of the people who used it were actually nurses. And nurses tend to want to do clinical things, not administrative and looking for stuff and software things. And over time, we wanted to meet their needs, and the platform kept elevating to the point where it's pretty darn easy to use now. It's really simple for these professional care navigators to use. And so a lot of them said, we're not going to have as many nurses as we used to. And we said, wait, now hold on a minute. That wasn't our intent, was for people to cut costs. Like, you still want nurses. So we had this lull, and now it's back up. And it's bigger than it's ever been before with these nurse programs. And I think the reason is because they've all identified that healthcare is so complex. And in particular, every condition is so complex that an individual will probably never reach a level of proficiency in their medical knowledge in a time frame that's reasonable to make a decision about their healthcare journey. Or not, I don't want to say make a decision, but to make a, maybe the best decision, or a decision that they're going to feel 100% confident in. And these nurses help give information that just in time manufacturing we were talking about yesterday or this morning, Nelson, they give that just in time information. So the member doesn't have to go through and be, I almost call it, a victim of search engine optimization and marketing. They are just a patient talking to a nurse who has their best interest at heart and is really going to help them in their healthcare journey, whatever that patient needs. So I actually think nurses are going to be the shining star of the next decade, not just with us, not just with the stuff we're doing. I think in the broader healthcare marketplace, it's going to become much more normal to have a nurse help you out in your healthcare journey, because it's just so hard. It is just so dang difficult to do that job, man.
Well, and one of the things we saw is with Coral, and you've addressed this with is it Coral One, Coral
Yeah.
Plus, Coral One, where an employee is not going to be navigating the Coral platform. It's not.
No. Yes.
And in fact, the brokerage advisor is going to have a hard time. So you've now provided basically a facilitator
Mm-hmm.
within Coral to help the
Yes.
advisor or the employee or the TPA, whoever it
Mhm.
might be, find the right bundle. But I want to. There's a great question or a great comment here from Brian Cheddar out in Arizona, in Phoenix. He says this Unity sounds like how PPOs started out. So let me ask the question: how does Unity compare to those older PPO models or the networks
Mhm.
that we live with today?
So a lot of people, I think there's a lot of folks here who have been probably around for a while, and there's probably some newer folks as well. But a CEO of a TPA gave me a great story about the genesis of a lot of the stuff that we deal with today. And back in the day, when you first had the employee-sponsored health insurance, you may say hospital A is this employer, this is in network, and hospital B is out of network, right? And that was the old way, kind of how it started out. And you would actually get a good deal at hospital A because you're committing to them. You have a relationship with them. You're saying, look, you give me a discount, you're my guy, right? Pretty straightforward business. But then folks started seeing, well, such and such is out of network. And then HR and the employer is trying to say, well, how do we remedy this problem? XYZ group is out of network. And over time, instead of it just becoming a kind of a standard conversation amongst these different parties, it started resulting in these weird negotiations where you had, again, traditional insurance premiums playing a role in this, and they need rising costs. And then everyone wants to go everywhere. So you have to contract with everybody as a network, as a PPO network that's got Signet, whatever behind it. And you end up where your only real negotiating strategy is going to be discount off of billed charges. That's going to be the most common strategy for most of the big networks over time. So it's basically become diluted is the short answer. The Genesis point is a little bit similar. We're trying to help the employees and help meet their needs and the employers and what they want. But where the other end broke down was that they are also the insurance carrier and they have only one way to make money, whereas our client is the employer and you, and that's who we work for. No other revenue streams, no other models. That is it. And we want to do a good job for you and keep you as a customer for life. So you build out kind of your own network. I don't know if I answered the question well, or Nelson, if you have any other comments on that.
I think so. The networks, the concept of the network was you may not be the only hospital, but all 5 hospitals aren't in the network. The 2 that are going to give us, as you said, we'll give you better rates if we're effectively networks steer patients to the providers. In other words, you go in network, you save money or you don't pay more money. You go out of network, it's very expensive. So I'm going to go to the in network, but eventually everybody became in network, which means there's no real value to anybody. Well, I guess to the patient who wants to go in
To
network.
the insurance companies. That's who got the real value out of this.
Well, that's right. That's right. But the savings have vanished, absolutely vanished, because there was no more exclusivity for those providers who were in the network. So this is a different conversation. And to some extent, it's not about being in the network. It's about your pricing. What are you willing to do to buy business?
Exactly.
It's a very simple business proposition. We are going to let you buy business. The insurance companies won't let you buy business. We will. And if you want to pay, you're going to give us a really good rate, you're going to get more business because the patients are going to have zero out of pocket. And I want to talk about transparency. Don't even forget that before we get out of here, but we've got some great questions. And this is one question. It starts out with bundles, but I think it applies to Unity as well. It is from an anonymous attendee, so I can't do a shout out. But he or she says, is it possible for a hospital that creates 6 or 7 bundles that will be used as a tier 1 benefit in a community health plan if they go onto the Coral platform to join the Bulls or Lakers? Can those bundles only be available to certain TPAs, like 1 or 2 TPAs? And the reason for the question, because this person comes back and says, I wanted you to know the advisor is doing all the work to get this in place. I don't want another broker or advisor to benefit from my work. Understandable. The question that, because this goes to Unity as well, we all want our secret sauce as a producer or sales professional or advisor or broker. Is this on the open market, or do I have to count on the fact that most of my competitors don't know Unity, don't know Coral, and so I'm going to be protected by that fact?
It's not the open market. So I think it's a great point. So even though we are a marketplace on Coral, Coral is a B2B solution. That is our business. We're not B2C. So none of the stuff we do is public. None of the stuff we do is online. And a byproduct of that is we do take very seriously the privacy and the concerns of both sides when it does come to pricing and, the transparency element that I know we're going to get to in a second, but I may jump on it a little bit here, is that we have certain providers, and I'm sure you all have heard of some like Surgery Center of Oklahoma and various markets where they say, hey, come one, come all. We want everybody. We are a free market. This is the price. The price is the price. Take it or leave it. We have a lot of those on Coral and a lot of those that we work with. But in general, you're going to find that that's not the norm. And a lot of these folks are going to say, I want to offer a common scenario is going to be your discount pricing from hospitals. We see this everywhere where in Coral, let's say we may have 50,000 lives in an area, like let's just say DFW, we got 100,000 lives, right? And I've got a block that's maybe
Dallas Fort Worth.
Yeah, Dallas Fort Worth area. So I've got about maybe a block of like 30,000 that belongs to one particular group. And the providers can say, they don't always, but they have the ability to say, for that one, I'm going to give better pricing because it's a volume discount for them. And I'm not going to give as good a pricing to the rest, but it's still going to be good, but maybe it's not as good. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't, but they're in control. And so as kind of the comment alludes to is, you're in control and they're in control. We are not in the business of sharing secret sauce to anybody. It's a program that's meant to be, if you want to get your competitive advantage and have your network over time, that's what we want to support. If it's a free market type situation, then that's also your prerogative and those providers' prerogative to kind of operate that way. So whichever way the market goes, Oklahoma, not a lot of people know, is one of the birthplaces for a lot of the free market stuff. So when I drive down, I was driving to the office here a little bit ago. Most of the good providers that people want to go to, they're all on Coral. Around in my neighborhood, there's an MRI center and a PT clinic just within a 1 mile radius. They're all on Coral, but that's not always the experience in every market. In certain markets, like let's say Boston, Massachusetts, certificate of need state, it's a lot more difficult. People aren't going to be free market up there because they've got to protect their business from Blue Cross or their other revenue streams from coming in and saying, well, why don't you give me that good price? This violates our terms. So we're very conscious of making sure that everyone's in control of their own data and their own information.
By the way, Brian Cheddar came back and said, good answer, good explanation. So well done.
Oh, thank you.
Dory came back and said, I assume this is in an outpatient surgery. I assume she's talking about Unity. If there are no bundles, can we apply this down into can Unity go down into the outpatient surgeries?
So Unity will contract with just about every type of provider that exists. I mean, we have drugs treatment centers. We just got a deal for a lot of surgery centers, obviously your labs, everything like that. We'll do just about anything that the client wants to contract with. Again, because that's the name of the game, is serving the client and what they want. Whereas Coral is your, tip of the spear, Navy SEAL bundles. Unity is really going to catch all this stuff, and you have RBP below that, right, as your last line of defense. So Unity really works with just about every provider type. And we even do, single case agreements and high cost claim negotiation and stuff like that. I'll give you an example right now. I've got a case we're working on Unity where this patient, it's an 8-year-old with scoliosis, a really bad case of scoliosis up in New York City. We've already, been talking to the doc. The doc was fantastic. And just like I was saying here earlier, that it's a conversation. So I called up the doc and I said, hey, here's what we're about, right? You need to make money. And we all know doctors are not the reason healthcare is expensive in America. So I want you to be paid what you deserve. And he goes, oh man, that's so nice to hear somebody say that. I love this. Well, this $145,000, because again, it's a 10-hour surgery, really complex case. Very few people do this. He said, man, let's just knock that way off. And this other price over here, he was just taking fees off left and right and giving me a real market rate. And I said, so what about the hospital? What is it going to be done at? It's inpatient, 5-day stay. It's a serious procedure. And he said, you know what? I'm going to call the CEO of that hospital. They need to work with us on this. They need to be a partner. And so that's how these conversations happen, is really just being open, being honest, and being transparent about what we're doing, what our objective is, right? We are trying to help fix their problem, which at the end of the day, there's a comment in here about surgery center pricing. At the end of the day, this relationship that these providers have and why sometimes people feel that they're so antagonistic is because they're getting beat up all day by insurance companies, right? But if you could just have that conversation, you solve so many problems. So we really deal with everything on the Unity side. Just about anything that we can help with, we want to help with.
You know, it's funny, you talk about getting beaten up by the insurance companies. I was invited several years ago to speak in Washington at the DPC Summit, Direct Primary Care Summit, the DPC Summit, which is for doctors. But I was asked to come and speak and represent the advisors and brokers out there who don't work for the insurance company, who are not captive. And I don't mean that in a legal sense, but that they are doing what's right for their clients. They're not just taking commission and a paycheck from the insurance company, to let these doctors know that there are brokers and advisors they can work with, even when they go DPC and are no longer taking insurance. That is a surprise to a lot of people, that doctors in particular, that there are advisors, brokers, and advisors who want to see them do well, that want to partner. And let me just say, what you just described, Morgan, was not a healthcare discussion with that doctor. And then his conversation with the CEO of the hospital, it was a business discussion. It's a business conversation. It wasn't even a negotiation. It was, I have an agenda. I have a goal. I'd like you to help me with this. Is this in your wheelhouse? Well, of course it is. See, he's the surgeon that does this. But then when he realizes where you're coming from, all of a sudden he's working with you and then says, I'll go recruit the hospital to work with you. That's a business deal that you're putting together, a business deal, not a healthcare deal. Two different things. The only business aspect in healthcare is on the carrier side. It's always benefiting the carrier. The reason that the hospitals charge what they do is because it benefits carrier. It's the only reason. The carrier allows it. All right, a couple of things real quick. There's one person on this call who knows more about the healthcare system and hospitals and ASCs than anybody else, and that's my friend Rob Parrish, who is out of Nashville and has worked for HCA and LifePoint Hospital Systems and a number of ASC companies. He asked, and you probably read the letter, the message, but I'll read it out. Since the majority of ASCs, ambulatory surgery centers, have physician ownership, not only efficiency, but also revenue sharing, what happens when some, but not all of the docs want to participate? And this, we're talking about bundle surgeries here. Since the profitability of the ASC is a collective effort of the profitability of all the docs, then the docs who are taking bundle pricing could be lowering the, I'm going to say could be because he says also are lowering the joint venture profitability for all, since the bundle pricing includes a facility fee.
I think that, I'll give you an anecdote or a story. I was tangled up in my charger there on my computer. Sorry about that. So a surgery center we work with recently sold. Thankfully, it wasn't to a PE firm. It was to someone we still work with and have a great partnership with. They got 10% of their total case flow from us. 10%. It's not, good amount, but it's not, the biggest number. And when they sold, they told us in the due diligence, they didn't even know themselves. They found out that we were 30% of the profit with 10% of the cases, 30% of the profit for that center. And so the big reason why is because a lot of people underestimate the administrative cost of chasing money. Whether it's what's the RBP plan, you're fighting with them, whether it's deductibles, copay, coinsurance, that there is a serious cost to the staff to do that, and just the lost dollars from not actually collecting them. So that center told me that crazy, but I'll take you 7 years ago with one of our second provider I ever onboarded. It's a large orthopedic hospital. And I remember sitting there with these gals and they were saying, this is a new system. These bundles, Coral, like this is new. I'm not into it. Right. And eventually I got them to start using it. Took about 2 months and they finally said, all right, I'll give it a try. Those three gals, it was 50 plus hours per week in this kind of billing. Now it's 1 hour per week billing through Coral. And the other two gals have been promoted and are in different departments now. And so I still work with one of them. She's phenomenal. She says it's the best part of her week. It's an hour every Friday. She goes in and we send them about $10 million a year in case flow. And it's just easy as pie. 52 hours a week for 10 million is not a bad deal, or 52 hours a year rather. So it really is just a different set of economics. But I think to your point, there are also certain markets where I'll be honest with you, pricing is different. There are certain markets where they have to charge more, but that's okay because that is the market, right? Healthcare is so many segmented markets that not everyone is looking for a $16, $17, $18,000 knee replacement. We have a couple of markets where it's going to cost you 25, 26, and I would say that's too high, but that market says it's fine, and that's okay.
Like politics, healthcare is eventually is local because the doctors are local, the facilities are local, and the patients are local. It's a great distinction to make. One other thing I want to mention though around the pricing of these bundles is the doctors are generally making double what they make
Correct.
in the OR at the hospital. And because, as you mentioned earlier, they're able to do multiple procedures in the same time they would be doing one at the OR in the hospital, the economics do change. And not every doctor can participate, but those who are actually bringing more in than their colleagues who might be operating at the OR in the hospital. And the ones who aren't are going to benefit from that flow. So that might be an interesting conversation since Rob is very plugged in to the ASC. He's worked for multiple ASCs on the JV side.
Do you mind if I add one more point there, Nelson? Because you just made me think of something. So there are some larger solutions out on the marketplace there's a couple of big bundled programs that have become very popular in the last 24 months with larger groups. And I got the privilege of seeing some behind the scenes stuff. And these companies tend to charge percentage of savings on bundles. And though there are certain plans that can be great with, and if you're doing a lot of work, that can be fantastic. But when you look at the number that these companies were making versus the number the surgeons were making, they were making more per case. And so I think part of your question may also be related to some bundled programs will actually really try to beat down the price because their incentive is to get the prices. It is a negotiation. It's kind of back to the old way, very antagonistic. They're going to play the parties against each other, try to get the surgeon to say, we need to take this case facility. And as you pointed out, like that can lower the overall margin. And so, ours, because it's a conversation and all these groups are, healthcare is local, like you said, Nelson, at the end of the day, it just changes the dynamic. So no one should be losing money or making, necessarily less money when the dust settles. It's almost like a volume discount. If you're going to do 10 of something instead of 5 of something in the same amount of time, you can take a little less money per case, but make more overall. And that's really what it's all about.
So a couple of, and I know we're going over here. If you have to jump, I understand, but the conversation's been so good. I'm gonna extend it out because there are a couple of good questions I want to answer. Patrick Custom asked, how do we find out geographically where you have bundles available?
This is a great question. So depending on life count and size and customer, we have a few different ways to tackle that. So our enterprise level customers, we'll give them heat maps and things like that of where we have lives. But you can just drop us a line and email us and we'll handle each one of those individually and kind of figure out what your life count size is and what type of solution is going to be best for you. Whether you want bundles, whether you want Unity, whether you want a mix of different things, there's a lot of different ways to tackle.
And we're not stopping talking for a minute, but I wanted to give those of you who need to jump maybe. Morgan's email is there at the bottom right. Morgan, I hope you don't mind me giving this out.
Hey,
it's
after Ascend, Nelson, Ascend, I got too many emails after Ascend, so this may be a lot. So
well, I think there's a lot of interest here, and so I know they want somebody to contact, and I could send them to Greg, but I think you're probably a better choice.
I'll take it. Take it.
So Morgan at coral.io, not com, coral.io, Morgan at coral.io. Coral obviously is coral.io if you want to go to their website. So let's see, a couple other questions. Can these bundles be accessed by a member? We're talking back to Coral now. Accessed by a member within an employer group that has a traditional network in place?
Great question. And so I think maybe back to our Iron Dome analogy and the traditional carriers being not the greatest folks sometimes when you want to save money. Certain networks will allow it, and certain network kind of fully integrated programs will. I can't name names, but certain ones will blacklist you and not allow you to do any more business with them if you use Coral because you save so much money that it takes it out of their pocket. A little concerning that they would do that, but there are some that do, and there are others that it's just fine. So it really depends on your carrier. A lot more of them are allowing carve outs these days, and we do have SVD amendments that we can supply. So you can drop that in and be fine. But you can just let us know your situation, email it to me, and we can check it out together and see if it's fit.
How many lives do you need from an agency to qualify? It's really, I guess, really more for this is now for Unity.
So for Unity, it's a little bit of a case by case because in certain geographies, if we have a ton of folks on it, then we want you to be able to piggyback off of our success already and just kind of hop in. So there's no like minimum, probably about 50 would be the minimum. And then in other markets where let's say it's brand spanking new, this point, I saw we added about 5,000 lives in Anchorage not too long ago. So we're kind of just about everywhere but Hawaii. So, but again, just let us know kind of the groups that you're interested in, and we'll take a look and kind of let you know on case by case.
And I guess if they've got the lives, it's a lot easier to have those conversations.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they
Because
don't, if the arrangements don't already pre-exist.
exactly, because it is you do always want to offer something to the providers, right? You don't want to just come and say, "Give me a discount for one," right? Because at that point, you're probably just better off doing a single case agreement, which we also can facilitate. But you may not need to pay a broader fee to us or anybody for that matter. If you're going to save 20K on one surgical case a year, just email us and we'll help you out. You don't need to sign up for anything additional.
All right, thanks. And then Next Gen OG, who's one of our charter mastermind partners, Bill Hughes out of Waco, Texas. Is broad pre-authorization the best way to force steerage? I think we would agree.
Yeah.
It's far and away the best.
It's definitely a strong. I mean, I would say I would caveat that with engagement and really, the whole company being in support of the program being kind of my first preference because you do want people to know about the benefit, right? There's a reason that we have 99.8 retention at Coral, and it's because when people get used to these programs, they love them. It's so the employees are the number one reason we've grown. Like the Coral's doubled every year for 6 years, and it's the reasons the employees because they bring the benefit with them.
Well, free healthcare is a damn good proposition.
It really is.
Right? You waive out of pocket, it's free healthcare. Pay your insurance premiums, but your healthcare is free when you need it. So that's a no-brainer. And finally, back to Brian Cheddar had a quick question. What percentage of deductibles are ever paid?
That is a dang good question. I do not know the answer to that. I know that facilities have a tough time collecting deductibles. I know that's a big game that is very difficult, but I'm not sure. Nelson, do you have any idea on that number?
I've heard it's around 10%.
Really? I mean, they're so
I've
high
heard.
these
10 to
days.
14, I think, is what I've heard. Don't hold me to that. I may be wrong. What I do know is that when they don't collect it, they receive 10% on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar from the collection agencies. So it might be higher than 10 because they're getting 10%. Well, they're only getting 10% on what's collected. No, and that's not. No, they pay them 10% and then they go collect. Yeah. So they're getting at least 10% from the collection agencies, but it's not, it is really, really low.
And Brian said
which is why there's so many collection agencies out there making money, collecting these, dunning people for these debts. I've heard Banner in Phoenix say 45% are paid. Thanks, Brian. That's helpful.
Pre-COVID. Oh man.
That was pre-COVID. So who knows? Who knows?
Wow.
All right. Thanks for staying on a little bit longer, Morgan. This has been terrific. This is, to me, this is a huge breakthrough. And look, there are, full disclosure, there are other companies out there having conversations like this with providers. It's not rocket surgery. What Coral brings is a national network of surgeons already on the platform,
Mhm.
and the financial aspect of it, the payment aspect with the
Mhm.
platform, and then the ability to reach out and put these deals together on a much wider scale. My question to you is this ready for prime time? You said absolutely, it's ready for
Mhm.
prime time, which
Yes.
means national, pretty much national
Mhm.
capabilities. And so that's what's exciting to me, is that this is a comprehensive effort to
Mm.
create that third layer of cost containment protection. So best of luck. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us, Morgan, in the Healthcare Lounge. And thank you for joining us today to talk about the Unnetworked Network. We'll be back next month with another Healthcare Lounge. Take care,
Perfect.
everyone.
Thank you.